I'm Roman Loyola here with Jason Cross
Good morning.
and Michael Simon.
Hello, sir.
So, based on feedback I get about the show, I know it'll be difficult for some listeners to believe that we prefer Apple products, and we, for the most part, we're in line with what Apple does with its products and practices. But there are a few things we wish Apple would fix or not do or change. And we're going to talk about them in this episode. So if you think Apple can do no wrong and think it's blasphemous for us to talk about them and their products in this way, this might not be the episode for you. And see, I say that because I get emails of people saying, we get emails of people saying, you guys hate Apple. Huh? You guys call yourself Macworld, but you hate Apple. How can you?
That's like all the emails we get. But that's really good.
We get a lot of those. I see them on social media, and to be fair, we do criticize Apple, but I think it's in part because, especially today on the internet, there's no room for nuanced criticism. You are a fan, and everything is good, and the competing product company, whatever, is evil and the devil, or you hate it. And everything they do is bad and it's failure. There's no room for anything, So we always say, it's not. We cover and write about Apple and its products. We like them by and large, but we're not writing for Apple. We're writing for you, the users.
Yeah.
And every time we complain, we're advocating for things to be better for you.
Yeah.
That's what we want. We want, and us, we're users. But we're on the user side, and we want things to be better for you. Apple's doing just fine.
There's plenty of joyful, positive, wonderful stories that we write, but the ones that are critical are generally the ones that get more attention. No matter who it is, it doesn't have to just be Apple, but our name is Macworld, so it implies that we're like a rah-rah fan site, but we're not. We cover Apple mostly exclusively, but we look at the things with the same critical eye that, a journalist writing for a small town would look at their local government. Like, we need to know what they're doing and how they're doing it and whether or not it's, as Jason said, right for the people listening to this and the people reading our stuff.
Yeah. I also, we mentioned this before, but Macworld's been around for decades, literally.
Yep.
And there's people who have been reading it for about that long, and you kind of get stuck in this mode of like when Apple was a small company going against the big corporate giants. And it was true that what was good for Apple was good for the users. It helped the company be successful and continue to make new, better products. You needed Apple to win and be successful. Now Apple's like the fighting to be the one largest, richest company in the world. Like it's got tens of thousands of employees. It's the most powerful, certainly the most influential tech company in the world. Like, we're not in that world anymore. Now Apple is the big. If you were to make the 1984 video again, they'd be throwing the sledgehammer at Apple's on the screen. Like, that would be the thing, right? Like, So you do have to take a different context.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, here are the things we want to change.
Here's something. So maybe I'll get this started because I have something that's, I guess, in the whole scheme of things, relatively minor and small, because I think you guys have bigger, more conceptual thoughts. Mine is more.
I'm whale hunting with mine. There's not a chance that.
Mine is small and I guess somewhat practical and more of an annoyance than anything. So the thing that I wish Apple would change is it's in regards to the Apple News app. I use that app a lot. It's where I check my news because I don't go to X/Twitter anymore. And I used to use that as my way to check news and stuff like that. Now I have to do it other ways. And one of the ways I do it is through Apple News. And one of the things that I have set up with Apple News is that I have set up Apple News to block certain sources, certain channels, for whatever reason, for multiple reasons, mostly because they have content that I'm not necessarily interested in. But the thing about blocking channels in Apple News is it doesn't really block the channel in Apple News. What often happens is I'll go through my feed and there's my blocked channel, and it'll show the headline. Instead of showing the thumbnail graphic, it shows a header that says, "You blocked this channel."
That's not blocking the channel at all.
That's not blocking the channel. And I want to block that channel. So
I've never blocked a channel in Apple News. I want to try it now.
That's hilarious that it actually still shows you the headline and then just says you blocked this.
You blocked this channel.
That's terrible.
And the thing too is that sometimes, Apple News has like editor's choices and they'll have like a top block of like the top stories of the day. And sometimes those blocks have the channels that I have blocked.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, so that's something I wish Apple would change.
I'm looking at Apple support for blocking and unblocking channels, and it says blocking is not supported in top stories or other groups curated by Apple News editors who vet each story in these groups for quality and accuracy. Now, that's the reason why you would block it. Like literally to block it from that. Like what else is there?
That's the main section that pops up.
Otherwise, all right, so maybe it's blocked from search, but top stories is like the thing that's in your face and changes every day and the things that you're going to look at. Yeah, that's a bit of why it might be difficult, but they should figure it out.
Well, that's the thing. After seeing this happen a lot of times, and if for listeners out there, the show notes for this podcast on Macworld.com will have a screenshot of what I'm talking about. So in case you want to see what it looks like. But after having experiencing this several times, I've come to the conclusion that Apple actually doesn't really want you to block any channels.
Well, sure. That makes sense, I guess.
Because, they want to promote Apple News to these sources. They want these sources to use Apple News. And the idea that a user can block a channel, if I'm a source, I don't like that feature. So, yeah. So it's kind of a knock against promoting Apple News when Apple's trying to promote this app to these sources.
Does Google News allow you to block sources? Oh, they do. Yes. I'm looking at it now. You can hide sources.
Yeah. So Google News,
and it'll hide them from the stories.
Google News is entirely algorithmic, though.
Right.
There's no human curation, so they're not running into that problem. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I use Apple News is because Google News will often, it's that old thing of like Tebow thinks I like this kind of show because you watched one show. So I'll look up one thing I'll do in a Google search because it's tied in, or I'll click on one article about some new comic book movie or something. And then it's like, they love comic books. And then my Google News is full of screen rant, like every time and everything. I'm like, I don't need this level of engagement with this. I don't need it every time I look at the news, every single day, whatever. I just need like one or two big stories a year, like tone it way down. So then you have to go like fewer stories like this. And then that never works. And then all of a sudden it stops showing up entirely. So managing the like algorithm for Google News is such a pain. That's why I like to use Apple News.
Yeah.
Because it's like a human curated, it's all mainstream, like, good sources and stuff. And I can go there and go like, all right, here's real news. Like, so the idea that if I block a source, it's just going to be there and show the headline even.
Right.
If it was there and just had like a block over it said, you blocked this source. Like, so you didn't see the headline or anything. But if you're seeing it all anyway.
So what happens is when the block content does appear, if you tap it, it'll tell you that you blocked this channel. Do you want to see this article? I don't have any hopes that Apple will quote unquote fix this feature. I think it works the way they think it should work. So it's just something I'm going to have to live with.
I'm with you. That's crazy. I don't care if it's curated. It just either leave a space or fill the whole space with you block this channel that doesn't show the headline or anything.
Yeah.
Or
even have a separate section. even have a separate section that says, you block these channels, here's what you could be missing. So I can understand that, but yeah, I don't expect Apple to change it anytime soon.
I mean, they might. They're tweaking stuff. I mean, I doubt it'll be on the back of this podcast, but they might. They might, have received criticism about it. It is kind of strange because if you're gonna block a channel, particularly one that's big enough to appear in top stories, there's got to be a reason. Like it's not just like you just feel like it one day. So if there are people doing it, they should be able to have backup stories. So like, just code it. If this is blocked, then fill it with this instead or something like that. I don't know.
I get the sense that people don't know you can do that, so they don't use the block channel feature very much.
I've never blocked a channel, but then again, I also don't think I've really been offended by anything to the point where I wanted to.
So not to prolong this issue, but what happened was I was going through Apple News and I got to a point where it was showing some regional content, but of like a different state. And I had to divert my attention to something else, and I had inadvertently tapped on that article. And it kept showing articles from this one periodical in a different state. So I was like, I don't want to read about these articles anymore because I don't live there and I'm not that interested in it. So I blocked it, but it still continues to show these blocked articles, blocked channels.
I mean, that's another issue altogether. Like it should learn that you are no longer interested or associated with whatever that region is.
Yeah, I think there is a setting somewhere for local something or other.
There is.
Not just using your location because people travel and you still want to get your local home.
Right. Yeah. Anyways, that's that. Who wants to go next?
All right, I'll
Jason.
Go. Here's another one.
I feel like Jason's is going to be longer than maybe not. Maybe not.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I wouldn't take odds on that. Here's another one they're not going to fix. All right, so it occurs to me that most of Apple's problems lately, maybe not most, a huge source of Apple's problems lately, and a huge source of Apple's users' frustration lately revolves around the App Store. And the App Store has gotten further broken over time. I think the idea of how to fix the App Store is that Apple needs to philosophically, from a high conceptual level, think of the App Store differently than it does. Mm-hmm. So my wish list item is fix the App Store. But what that entails is Apple thinks of the App Store as a service, both for developers and for users, and it's a service upon which it wants to make money. And I think it needs to, and that leads to ads in the App Store and tolerating all these like predatory apps that, and a 30% fee that's getting it in trouble in Europe. And then it has to have separate app stores all over the world. And there's now Japan wants to outlaw these things and every region's like got a problem with them. This all solves if Apple starts thinking of the App Store not as a service whose revenue needs to be optimized, but as a cost center that is used to enhance the value of the platform, both for developers and for users. There's this concept of a moat in business of like, these are the things that make it hard for people to compete with you because of your size and scale. Like if you want to be Toyota's got over 60 factories around the world. So it doesn't matter how good a car company you are, that's a several decades, many billions of dollars investment just to even be at their scale. Well, not a lot of companies, not even Google, I think, because Google's not raking in money selling devices, can afford to say, we're not going to make any money on our App Store. We're going to run it as zero, like revenue, like non-profit. You're going to only
saying
make the money that it costs to run it.
Give up the 30% Fee.
Yeah, so that's one of them.
Like
so
that's the number one thing.
So one step is,
or rather, that's where you're starting.
Yeah, there's about five. Well, I'm not counting them, but like there's pieces to this. One piece is So if you start thinking of it as, well, what we want people to do is go back. If you go back to when the App Store was pretty new, apps came to iPhone first and best, and then they got an Android version later and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of that was because Apple's tools were great and people were spending more money on iPhone and all that stuff. But you can get back to that if Apple has terms and an App Store experience that are better. And to do that, they have to give up the idea that they're going to make money. They don't make that much money compared to the rest of the money the company makes, right? Like they could give up.
So services as a whole is what, 20 billion, something like that, and 18 a quarter,
right?
Something
and
like
that's
that.
Apple.
And that includes everything.
Yeah, that's Apple Music and
right.
Just
Apple TV Plus, obviously.
Right.
iCloud.
Yeah,
iCloud.
everything.
Yeah, all those other things. And that's what percentage of the company is that? The company's revenue is that?
Yeah,
so we're talking about small. Getting rid of like a 2 or 3% of the company's revenue, right?
Yeah.
But improving things so much so that I think more people will gravitate toward the platform, and then you make money that way. So yeah, number one, the 30%/15%. Are you an independent developer? And then you have the first million things where we charge you a different rate. That's just, you can get rid of all that and say, look, it's 5% for everybody. That's it. That's enough to cover credit card transaction fees and a little bit like hosting costs and stuff. But you know what? We're going to eat a lot of that. Our hosting costs, the people we have checking apps and all that other stuff, that's a cost center for us. We're no longer making money. That's, and then, now that's number one. Number two is ads. The ads in the App Store made it so much worse. And I understand that like developers want to aid in discovery, but you shouldn't have ads in search results. I shouldn't be searching for an app and then have a different app at the top of the screen, looking barely like an ad. Like I have to squint and look sideways to see, oh, that's an ad.
Right.
That's not what I was looking for. Like that's just a bad user experience. So let ads just be in things like category listings, but never in search. Never get paid to be promoted by Apple's team. Apple does all these like app stories and stuff. Those are great. Don't let people pay to get in those and stuff. Mm-hmm. So ads way, way, way down in the App Store. Far, far, far fewer. Crack down on all these stupid predatory apps. All these apps that are free, but they're a subscription that's $10 a month for something that could not possibly cost $10 a month, and they try and trick you into getting it. There's all these apps that are meant to sound like they're some other thing. Like if you search for Samsung Smart Things, which is their like smart home ecosystem, you get all these like knockoff, not really Samsung apps that are meant to control smart things, and they're meant to named and meant to look. Crack down on all the apps that are like meant to look like and sound like popular games and stuff. If we're all noticing this, there's not a chance that Apple's App Store team doesn't notice this, right? Just write the policies and the rules to crack down on this stuff. Remember, you're no longer making money on the App Store. You don't have a vested interest in some scam app charging somebody $10 a month that they forget to unsubscribe from or more, right? So get rid of all that and just get back to the good experience of I'm not being inundated with ads. I'm not full of scam ads. They're not taking seriously. They always promote the App Store as like the App Store is safe, right? But it's only safe when you define safe as you don't get viruses. And malware. It's not safe from scams and predatory apps and apps that try and trick you into making in-app purchases and all this other stuff. It's really obvious. It's a huge problem. And if Apple's not concerned about making money on the App Store anymore, then their biggest incentive is to make those things go away and provide a good experience. And then I think, app developers will start to gravitate to the App Store because, number one, they're making a better percentage than they ever did. Probably better than almost any competing app store could do. And Apple's the EU thing is just the beginning. I can't imagine if 10, 15 years from now, there aren't other significant regions throughout the world where Apple is required to do more or less what they're doing in the EU and let other people compete. The EU's not happy with the way that Apple's done it. They're about to get slapped down. You could make all of this go away and make every developer go like, oh, I'm targeting iPhone first. And Mac, for that matter. Like, the Mac App Store is kind of a little bit of a wasteland because it's much better just to publish yourself on the web and stuff.
Yeah.
But
most big Mac apps aren't even on the App Store. Yeah.
But for 5%, you couldn't do it yourself. You couldn't do your own turnkey, like card swipe and hosting and all that other stuff for 5%. You'd be happy to be in the App Store. Like, oh man, they're taking care of distribution and they're only charging me 5% on like credit card processing and all that stuff. Like, yeah. And then all of a sudden the Mac App Store is good, So to the degree that there's some limits to what apps can do, in the app and be published in the Mac App Store. But yeah, just do that. So that's my big ticket item. Fix the App Store, but fix it by changing the way you view it as a company into being something that costs you money to bring people to the platform, not something that you make money off of because it's such a great service for developers or it's such a great service for users. It's hard to take any of that as good faith where it's like, they love that. Look how popular the App Store is. People love it. It's like, there's no alternative. It's all there is.
I mean, listen, the App Store on the iPhone it's really good. And
except words,
right. That's what I was going to say. Like, but there are parts of it that are terrible. And there are times when I'm looking for a specific app and I can't even find it because the search term isn't quite accurate, or it's pulling, for one, the ad at the top is, I can't imagine how many people get fooled by that first search result. And Google search is another example that happens.
Oh God,
I get
Google
fooled
has
by
turned
that
terrible
sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's not an Apple unique thing. It's a search thing in 2024.
Yeah.
But if Apple prides itself on making its devices simple and easy and pleasurable, that is not at all.
But
that
Apple's big advantage here is that Apple makes most of its money selling devices.
Yes.
And some premium services, things like Apple Music and Apple TV Plus, those things are growing and all that. But that's not true of your Googles and everybody else in the world. Like that's where they make their money. That's all where they make their money. So Apple has an opportunity to provide a better experience that others don't have, because they would go bankrupt. So that's what I mean. Like the App Store could be and the whole way that Apple runs it could be a moat that nobody else could compete with, because they're just not raking in billions of dollars selling somewhere else that they could do that and say, we don't need to make money off any of this.
So last quarter, Apple made $24 billion in revenue for services, and that was on 91 billion total. So that's
a quarter.
It's about a quarter of what
I have
they
no
make.
idea what the breakdown is.
Right. So that's
Store.
been growing pretty exponentially over the last 3 or 4 years, and correlating with Apple TV, Apple Music, and the rise of those services that actually give you value more so than like an in-app purchase. So my guess is, let's say half is the App Store. And that's
I think that'd be
wildly overstating it. But let's say they make $10 billion a quarter on the App Store.
Right.
If you cut, so you're suggesting cut it to 5%, so that brings that down 30%. They're still making a nice chunk of money. Everybody's happier. They probably sell more devices on the back of it. And what you're saying sounds insane because Apple's never going to do it. But if you break it down logically, like, why not? Why can't they just say, you know what, we're tired of fighting everybody. This is the new rule. Everyone's happy. The governments are happy. The developers are happy. Users are happy. Apple loses a little bit of money, but not enough where they're going to go out of business.
And if they make all those people happy, especially developers and users, then over a year or two, you suddenly become that place where it's like everything comes to iPhone first, or Mac, first. You start to, God, can you imagine if Mac became a place where like cross-platform apps like were on Mac first?
Yeah,
they so rarely are.
Right?
Yeah, can you imagine a game? Yeah, like how many game companies would gladly put their game in the App Store?
Yeah,
for 5%, because they don't get that on Steam or anything else.
Right.
They're all on Steam because Steam's doing 30% or something like that, but it's everywhere and it's huge and it's millions and millions of users. But for if they can pocket more of the money, they'll absolutely do it.
And listen, like Steam's not selling well, they are, but not on the level of Apple.
Right. No,
like
devices is a relatively new thing.
Right.
They make all their
Steam
money.
Has to charge that because they need the revenue. To run that thing.
And Google running ads and search and stuff like that. They're an ads business.
Right.
That's what
their
they do.
Business. Exactly.
I
understand.
They're not making a gajillion dollars on Nexus phones. It's just not. And Pixels.
We can all remember.
Phones. Wow, that dates me. Nexus phones on Pixel devices and Nest devices. Like that's a business, but that's not Google's business.
Yeah. I mean, we could all remember, like, it used to be exciting for when a new app launched on the App Store, and like we would review it. It wasn't $20, or I'm sorry, it wasn't like free, but to unlock everything else, it's $20 a month or whatever. Like developers used to. They would approach it as if it was like a platform that they can. Now it's like a lot of it seems predatory, and even if it's not, it still seems that way. I'll give you an example. My wife downloaded a yoga app, I don't know, a month ago, and it's like, she really likes it, but it's like, I don't know, $20 a month or $18 a month to stay. Yeah. And it's like, well, that's crazy. Like, you're not paying that. Like, we're not paying.
Like, I know
I'd pay $30 to buy it, to have it for forever or the life of the update.
And I know they're probably putting out new yoga videos.
Yes, they are
stuff on there. So that's there's a cost there, but it's not like this is Netflix money. What are you, nuts?
Right. Like, that's exactly right.
Like $4.99 a month if I'm really into yoga. Sure. Yeah. So a lot of it, and if suddenly they're not paying 30% to Apple, they're paying barely more than they would pay Square or Stripe for a swipe fee. Plus it's hosted and all that other stuff. Like, every developer is just like, sure. And it would take a long time for prices to drop.
Way more. They'd get way more. They wouldn't have to charge $20 to keep the lights on because they would have way more users and better discovery and everything else. So it's, I agree. It's better for everyone. It's just never going to happen.
So I think this became a snowball that rolled downhill where, like, as the iPhone grew more popular, as the App Store grew more popular, this was a service that cost Apple money, and it's always been something that was monetized, but they started to look at it like, okay, we need to maximize revenue from all our services. Right. And so let's do search here. Let's do search there. Let's do these rankings. Let's pay people to write these stories to highlight apps. And then they changed all the way subscriptions work. And that really helped developers do more subscription apps and stuff. And it's like, at every little step of the way, it's felt like it's making it worse for users. It's felt like it's made it so that developers, in order to survive, have to play this game. And Apple's the one company that could really not do any of this.
Yep.
And still rake in tons of cash overall, as a company. So that's
they had a chance last year or this year. Well, this year is the EU stuff was last year. They had a chance.
It went into effect this spring. Yeah, it had to go into effect.
Oh, right. iOS 17. But so, I mean, they had a chance to really reset all this. And they didn't. In fact, they made it worse. With all those, like, if it's free, then you got to pay this and that. Like, they made it way worse.
Yeah, they have split rules and split app stores in different regions with different rules, and then there's like competing things. And the EU's still not happy with what they did, so they're about to get re-sued or get fined, and the fine is enormous. for what the EU is going to fine them. That's the money that they probably made lost doing all this, and they could have made everyone happy. So Apple will never do this, but I just think it's not really about do this thing, do that thing, do this thing with the App Store. That also doesn't have a long tail to it. It's about just philosophically thinking of it as, no, we don't make money on the App Store. The App Store is there to sell iPhones by being the most user-friendly thing, best value thing, both for developers and for users. And it's not.
Right. I mean, they call them in business. It's like a loss leader. You basically, it's basically a service that you're probably going to lose a little bit of money on. Like, for example, Costco with those chickens that they sell for $5. Yep. It clearly cost them more to make.
Oh, absolutely.
But they refuse to raise the price because it gets people into the store and it gets them buying other things.
Right. That's why it's at the back of the store.
Right. Yeah. Right. You have to go all the way to the back to find them.
You have to go all the way to the back.
Everyone's buying them, but they also fill up their cart with other stuff. Yeah.
They're great. You can't buy a raw chicken for $5. They're selling cooked ones. Like it's awesome.
It's the greatest thing ever. Yeah. This is a Costco podcast, but if you're not a member, go sign up and get a chicken.
So make the App Store the Costco chicken of Apple's business. Make it something that you charge as little as possible, that you're losing money. They could never make it free because Apple has to pay credit card
you don't have
companies
to
2% or something. Yeah, 5% would take care of that that part of it and sort of the hosting part of it, and then it's just the human labor cost of like approving apps and all that other kind of stuff. Just eat that. That's just cost of doing business. Just eat it. Just take it.
And listen, if you really want to be jerks, you can still charge Epic like 30%. It's fine.
Call it the Tim Sweeney fee, name it after him, be rude, super rude. Yeah.
If there's some reason why you still got to pay 30%. Yeah.
So those are two things that Apple will never fix. Mike, do you have something that...
So mean.
Well, yours might get fixed, Roman. It's possible.
Yeah, I'm listening to Romans and I'm thinking like, no, that makes sense. If it's blocked, if you blocked it, it should be blocked.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's fixed by like next Wednesday. Like that was pretty easy.
What do you got, Mike?
So mine is more encompassing, and mine could be fixed in various levels. But mine is consistency, and so I'll start small. Numbering, like iOS is on 18. Mac OS is on 15. So the upcoming ones.
The same ones,
18 and 15, yeah. TV OS is on 18, but it's not. Like it jumped from like 3 to like 14 a couple of years ago. Watch is on 11. Yeah.
Yep.
Like why? Why?
Vision's on 2. There's another one now.
Vision's on 2, right?
Yeah.
So like why did they jump TV OS but not Mac OS? Why was Mac OS on 10 for like a decade and a half? And then they just arbitrarily decided to just go to like 11.
Right.
So like that drives me crazy. Like why? And then within that, there's the points are sometimes different as well, because you have 0.6 on one, and then sometimes one doesn't get updated, then the other one does. It drives me crazy, and there's got to be someone in Apple that like in every single meeting raises their hand and says, "Hey, maybe we should like normalize or homogenize our numbering system for OSs."
I think the good opportunity to do this is like possibly next year with the iPhone 17, if not the iPhone 18, is supposed to go through a fairly significant iPhone redesign and stuff. That's a good opportunity to make everything go to 20.
Yeah. Samsung did it.
Yeah.
They did it like 4 years ago. They said, all right, we're just jumping everything to a whole number.
Right. So just all your operating systems, it's 20. They're in sync. They're 20.1, 20.2 at the same time.
And no one's going to care if you reset it. Like, it's fine. Like, it's not going to be an issue.
I don't know anybody who knows what version number of anything they're on.
There's that.
At all.
Right. They just see an update and they click the button.
Yeah. And keeping Mac OS as having sort of their own little brand names, that's just like, history for Mac fans. Like
Right.
They keep doing that, but it's not really a thing.
There's no need for it. Like, right, Sonoma's fine, but why is that named and nothing else is now? Like, back when you named Mac OS 10, that was it. There was only Mac OS 10. Now there's 17 different operating systems. You don't have to pay for any of them. They're updated every year.
Yeah, it's true.
Like, it's like just so eliminate the naming, homogenize the numbers, and so that's the first part. The second part is the products. We got iPhone 16. The Apple Watch is Series 9. Okay, that's kind of numbers. iPad, they don't have numbers now. It's the chip.
Mm-hmm.
The AirPods generations.
Right.
Mac. Imagine the Apple started numbering MacBooks. Like we'd be on like MacBook like 33. Like it's like what? At some point, it just gets unwieldy. And there's no reason
have model
to do
year
it.
numbers. Like MacBooks have model year numbers.
Right.
iPads,
Early 2024 or late 2023, whatever. Yeah.
iPads don't have numbers, but they have generations.
But they did for a little while.
And then AirPods have generations. They don't have numbers. And then the iPhone SE has generations, but the other iPhones have numbers. And then the Apple Watch has numbers, but what's called series, but then they have Ultra, and that started back into 0. So there's like Ultra 2 is the same as Series 9. So yeah, I see what you mean. Like there needs to be
consistency,
some consistency here.
Yeah, and then all right, so now those are the big ones, and then we get into like the smaller things, like Siri is different on every single device that you use it on. It's not the same. The Mac is different than the phone. It's different than the watch. Like, so the experience you're getting on each different device or Apple TV, it's different. It's not consistent, and it drives me crazy. I hear another one, Apple Music, right? So if I'm using the podcast app, everywhere I open my podcast app, it syncs. Apple Music doesn't. If I go to a different device, it's a different song. I can use handoff, but that's not good enough. Like I want everything. Like I just be consistent with everything that you're doing. They have the ability. They're the only company that makes this level of products that are so interconnected. And when they work, it's amazing. Like how everything flows and usually I sit down at my Mac and my watch unlocks. So like it's all incredible when it works. But there's just little annoyances that are just inconsistent, and it drives me crazy.
And I think it's especially true that it's more important for them because they think of it all as an ecosystem that works together.
Yeah.
So it's more, it behooves them more to know, to let people who don't follow this stuff and aren't in the weeds about everything, just know that like, all the products numbered 20 are of the same generation that came out the same year, and then 21. And so like whether it's the watch or the iPhone, the iPad, the earbuds, whatever, so that you kind of just understand that everything, and that way anyone just sort of colloquially without following this stuff would know like, oh yeah, well I have the iPhone 22 and a Mac 18, and I know that's 40, and it's 4 years different, or 4 generations or whatever. It just, you kind of know how separate they are, how different they are, and then you feel like, okay, well that's why they're not working together the way they could be. Like all the stuff that's numbered the same came out at the same time and is going to work together best, So yeah, I feel like they have more reason to kind of find some solution to naming and numbering and features and stuff.
Yeah.
Siri is a tough one because some of it's done in the cloud, some of it's on device, and devices have different power and stuff like that. They've gotten
maybe
better
Apple
about
Intelligence
the
is the start of like a reset there, but
it's going to take a few years.
Yeah,
it's going to take a few years, right? Of both developing Apple Intelligence and catching the devices up. But that's another good reason just to be like the devices 2 years from now should all have the same naming numbering scheme, so that we all understand that like when Siri's terrible on this other thing, okay, that's because it's 4 years old. Like I get that. Like I didn't know that because I don't follow this, and I don't know what a 4th generation iPad 11 is. Like, when did that come out? I follow this and I don't know when that came out.
Right. I have to look that stuff up all the time.
Right. So, yeah. So they don't have any hope. People don't have any hope of doing it. If you had a way, if you were going to go with something, what would it be? Would you want them all to have numbers? Would you want them all to have model years? Would you want them all to be generations? And then you wouldn't want them to be different generations, right? You wouldn't want 3rd gen AirPods Pro and 9th gen iPod. So how would you pick?
If it's an annual thing, the year is fine, like iOS 2024. But then you're crossing over, so I guess it would be 2025 because it's mostly 2025. But I understand. I'm not saying it's an easy fix. I'm not saying you can just snap your fingers and everything is perfect. But someone at Apple, like they need to have like a team that figures out how to do it, because some, like the iPad, for example, is not on an annual schedule. The Macs mostly are. The iPhone obviously is, and so is the Apple Watch. So so some things aren't and some things are.
I would, if it was me and I had to solve this and wave my wand and make it happen, I would make all the physical products just have a model year. And it's okay if they don't come out every year. It'll be AirPods Pro 2023, 2023, and then AirPods Pro 2025, and that's fine. That's when it came out. And then all the software would just be whole numbers that are the same whole number for when they all came out and work together. They'd all be synced up. They'd all start next year or whatever with iOS 20, watchOS 20, macOS 20, just like everything. And I would do them separately like that. I wouldn't do the software model years, and because software gets updated and it runs on older products and it all, So that's what I would do. All the software, whole numbers, all in sync together, and then products, all model year numbers.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, Jason, just to reiterate Jason's idea, having the software having the same version number would be good for users, because then they would know that they are feature compliant, that they have compatible features, because that's happening more and more now with these operating systems, that you have to have the same level of OS in order for them to be interoperable. It's happening more and more, and especially with Apple Intelligence, it's going to be happening a lot.
It would just be much more clear if somebody's like, well, how come my phone and my no longer is syncing with messages on my Mac or something like that? And they would look and they go like, oh, I'm on macOS 20.3 and I'm on iOS 22.1. Okay, so I'm out of whack. Right now, you can't tell because they all got different numbers anyway.
Yeah.
So it would just be clear. Yeah. I'm with you, Mike.
Maybe we'll see that happen at WWDC next year. We're lucky.
along with the 5% App Store.
The 5% App Store.
And no ads, and crack down on all these like apps that are meant to fool you into thinking your other apps or fool you into subscriptions. There's a bunch of this is there's a real knot to untangle with the apps.
Yeah. That does it for this episode of the Macworld Podcast, episode 895. Thanks to Jason Cross and Michael Simon, and thanks to you, the audience. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, or maybe you have some grievances about Apple you'd like to air, send us an email at podcast@macworld.com, or contact us through X, that's @Macworld, or on Threads, that's @Macworld_HQ, or on the Macworld Facebook page. We may use your comment in a future Hot Takes episode of the show. You can subscribe to the Macworld Podcast in a podcast app, on Spotify, or through any other podcast app. And join us in the next episode of the Macworld Podcast as we talk about the latest in the world of Apple. See you next time.